Can JJ McCarthy get anything back in this preseason game, or is it too late? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, coming to you from parts unknown today. Today's episode is brought to you by KALSHI. For a limited time, download the KALSHI app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. So thank you so much for being patient with the hotel look here, but today is the last time we get to talk before the second preseason game. So here's how this is going to go. The Vikings are going to play the Ravens. After that game, I'm going to go live for a full Locked On Vikings episode, and I'm going to go directly into a post-game squad show with Sam Ekstrom and Luke Inman. That'll be, and Tyler Fornes. And so that'll all be very fun, just like it was last week, and I'll be back at the homestead for that as well. For now, previewing this preseason game, I think this is a big moment for JJ McCarthy and his short-term value with the team. And his short-term value with the team could turn into a long-term thing. If the right offer or whatever comes along, it could turn into him being traded if they decide they're done with this project or whatever. But moving all of that away, this needs to be a confidence-building moment for JJ McCarthy. I mentioned it on yesterday's show, that this game against the Ravens needs to be something where the Vikings see that he can operate anything. And so what I would love to see, and I don't think we're gonna because of the way Kevin O'Connell does business, but what I would love to see is JJ McCarthy operating offense on a simpler level. I keep going back to that Adam Thielen NFL Live thing that came earlier this offseason that confirmed a lot of what I've been saying for the last year plus about Kevin O'Connell's offense. This is a PhD offense. There's a bajillion sight adjusts. There's a bunch of things that can change at the line of scrimmage, a bunch of signals you can give to change a route. There's sight adjusts that don't have a signal with them at all, that just rely on what the defense does. If they back off into this shell, the receiver does this, the quarterback has to be on the same page as him and throw. If I can get a little nerdy, Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown, before Antonio Brown went crazy, did this a ton. They were great at it. They were this great duo about adjusting against coverage and what was going on. And some of that back in the day, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that some of that was freelance, and the Vikings just kind of worked that way intentionally. That is the philosophy behind Kevin O'Connell's offense, is to make these adjustments to essentially force the defense to be wrong at all times. But you got to always be on the same page, and JJ McCarthy hasn't been able to do that. And so for me, what I'm looking for in this preseason game against the Ravens is not necessarily for him to get that. Don't think he has it right now. I think we saw that in the first game against the Giants. He does not have that timing and that ability to manage all of those tiny little things. Balls are coming out a little late or a little early, rushing his reads, snap mistimings. So what I would love to see is for him to run the Carson Wentz version. And this is at the crux of my take. So if you want to know my take about the quarterbacks, it's that both of these guys have failed to play to a QB2 level in the first preseason game. They were both bad enough where we're in a Manny and Mond situation, is the way I've been saying it. That the best plan for the Vikings is to look outside the organization for their backup quarterback and to roll with Kyler Murray. And the idea of debating between JJ McCarthy and Kyler Murray is long gone. The thing that McCarthy can do is to show that he can play the simplified Carson Wentz version of things. Carson Wentz played a bunch of quick game, kept things a little bit cleaner. He had a couple of throws that were intermediate throws, like the one to Miles Price. That was not a great throw. He was kind of getting hit for it, so I don't blame him too bad, but it was not a great throw. And Miles Price kind of plucked it away. It was the very first Carson Wentz throw. There was another back shoulder fade that ended up not hooking up. But the vast majority of Carson Wentz's game, I mean, he was the only one that got screens. He got way more one-step drop, quick bubble screen, that kind of stuff. If McCarthy can do that, then he's QB2. If he can't even do that, like, I want to test that. Let's lower the degree of difficulty and see if we solved the J.J. McCarthy problem by making things a little easier. If we did that, he ain't starting over Kyler Murray, but at least he can be QB2. If he goes in, we can run that kind of easier offense and have essentially a souped up version of what Carson Wentz did last year. But if J.J. McCarthy can't do that, then you have to make Carson Wentz QB2 and move on, right? And Kevin O'Connell did the thing where he doesn't commit to any depth chart stuff when he's asked about it in a presser. He basically never does. He didn't commit to J.J. McCarthy as QB1 at all last year, and McCarthy started every game he was healthy for. So that's not as meaningful to me as it might be to some people that want to like rile you up more. But I'm not trying to do that. What I'm trying to say is here's the standard, right? Carson Wentz is a very clean and easy evaluation. Super easy to figure out exactly how good he is at football. The average depth of target will go down. The time to throw will go down. It's going to be a quick game kind of offense. It's going to be very spread out, West Coast, and get the ball out of your hands quick and get it to your playmakers. There's a super like hard ceiling on that makes it really difficult for you to win more than half your games, but you can limp through if somebody's hurt. That's kind of the idea of Carson Wentz. You can go 2-3, right? Like that's exactly what happened last year. And with McCarthy, he represents a potential for a more dynamic offense, but he has to be able to at least run that. He has to be able to at least run the Carson Wentz part of it. And if he can't do that, then you either have to just like banish him to the basement, QB3 or whatever, or trade him away to the highest bidder and just kind of call this thing a wash and see what you can get out of him. But we're not to that point at all, to me. So here's what I want to see from J.J. McCarthy. There's two things, right? And one, and it's not about the timing. If balls are still coming out a little late, I understand that. That's going to be a thing. But what I want to see is, for one, I want the snaps to be timed properly. I want the pre-snap to go correctly. If you make a bad pre-snap read, that happens to veterans too. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about actually operating things right. Make the motion man come in, don't rush the snap, make the huddle call correctly, get everybody on the same page, and everybody does the right thing. What I don't want to see is miscommunications. Pre-snap penalties are tough. Like there's one that Caleb Tiernan got. By the way, he's got his ankle injury. Seems like it's going to take him out for a decent amount of time, which is a bummer. You would love to see him try to have a bounce back from the really bad game he started. But we'll see how that develops. But there was one from Caleb Tiernan before he got hurt where he just went a little early. And it didn't seem like there was a problem with the communication of the snap count. Everybody, and Tiernan was just trying to anticipate a little bit too much, and he leaned forward too much. He gets called for a false start. That can't happen for Tiernan. But in terms of J.J. McCarthy, that's not his fault. I'm not going to be worried if that kind of thing happens. I'm going to be worried about stuff like illegal shifts, getting to the line with 7 seconds left, getting that stuff wrong, mistiming the snap on the jet sweep and having a busted play. Those kind of operational things cannot happen at any level of the NFL. You can't be a practice squad quarterback if that stuff happens. So if that stuff's there was this article from Matt Freese that came out at Wide Left that I thought was really good. I more or less agreed with his assessment of every single J.J. McCarthy play, which that's what the article was. It evaluated every single play. And I more or less agreed with his assessment of what happened on those plays. And I'm just a lot more alarmed than him on stuff like screwing up the operation. But if that just happened on the first game and you were weird that day and you go have 2 more preseason games where you're playing a little better, it's fine. I'm fine with that. Cool, you figured it out. Maybe you were just a little bit out of it that day and we can move on. I'm not going to hold that against you a bunch. But if it continues to happen, then I'm sounding big time alarm bells about, do we even want this guy in the 53? Screw the draft pick and the contract and the meaning of it all. But if you can't do that, that's a cuttable player to me. And you know me, I have been parrying away all kinds of J.J. McCarthy stuff about them replacing him with Aaron Rodgers last year, or I basically said that Kevin O'Connell is the biggest J.J. McCarthy fan, and I've been proven right about that like basically every time. But like he keeps not signing Aaron Rodgers and such, he keeps not trading him. But if that operational stuff isn't there by year 3, and one of those years was 100% and just in the nose in the playbook, if that's still not there, I think you start to say, let's cut bait. And what do we do with that? Do we trade him for a next year 7th or something like that? So that's what I really want to see. And the second thing I want to see that's a little bit less high stakes, but I do want to see those balls not sail as high. I just want you to see those, like, get those passes down. And a lot of those are on the run, which he's just not been a great thrower on the run. And he wasn't that excellent of a thrower on the run at Michigan either. Like, that's just not his game. But if you're going to do it, I want to see those passes go low a little bit and get back, like, on the body on the break and not, like, sail them a whole bunch, which is also what he's been doing. So with all of that said, this could be a big moment for JJ McCarthy to either assuage a lot of those concerns or send them into overdrive. Because if it happens in one preseason game, that's one thing. If it doesn't happen in the next two, that one preseason game starts to matter a lot less. If it happens in two preseason games, it is an extremely persistent issue that then becomes, can we even get this guy to a point where we can trust him with our offense after an injury or two? If you can't do that, I do not care how much potential you have. I don't care how hard you throw it. I don't care how much the guy likes your emotional makeup or whatever he's made of the right stuff meant from Kevin O'Connell, as he said that many times over the last few years. At that point, you just don't get to be part of the franchise. And that's going to be the way it is. But there are other young players who have, I think, a lot that they can show to me in their second preseason game. Ty Felton and Chuck Demings, that'll be next on Locked On Vikings. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. This is funny. This is a big thing for Arif Hassan, my co-host on Locked On Vikings. He's a huge 5 Hour Energy guy. And so I'm on a beach vacation right now, and there are certain 5 Hour Energy flavors that immediately give me that summer feel. That classic red, white, and blue freezer pop kind of thing that you remember maybe from when you were a kid. Sweet cherry, lime, blue raspberry, and now 5 Hour Energy is bringing that flavor combination into the new Firework Freeze 5 Hour Energy shot, blending sweet cherry, zesty lime, and electric blue raspberry into one refreshing shot, inspired by those iconic summer freeze pops. You remember walking around in the driveway. For me, there was a basketball hoop that we would always play with. So it was always the shoot the basketball around a little bit, come in, cut the corners of your mouth on that thing. But how about save the corners of your mouth and get a little bit of that clean 5 Hour Energy burst that'll get you through your day. Ignite your taste buds with the flavor of the summer. Get a Firework Freeze 5 Hour Energy shot today. For more information, visit 5hourenergy.com. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings the first listen of the day. Let's move away from this quarterback thing, from JJ McCarthy and all of that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kyler Murray won't play, right? So JJ McCarthy is going to start the game, and so we get to kind of see that against the Ravens. The joint practices happened. I should sneak that in, that the Vikings had their second joint practice with the Ravens, and again, the Brian Flores defense was so utterly dominant that the Ravens kind of couldn't practice. It depends on who you listen to and who their count is, because what counts as a sack in practice is kind of nebulous because they don't actually take the guy down. But Dallas Turner could have had 3 to 4 sacks. There was some amazing plays from the rookies, from Golday and Banks. The defense went absolutely crazy in this. Also, some injury news. Theo Jackson walked off the field, gimping under his own power, but gimping and never returned. So that's a situation to watch. But in his stead, and even before that sometimes, Jacob Thomas, not Jacoby, who I believe is still dealing with an injury, Jacob Thomas, the JMU undrafted rookie, who I think went JMU, was he also Miami? He's taken reps with the ones. So there might be a surprise starter with the Vikings at safety there. Jacob Thomas, the one who got the interception against Brandon Allen last week, is getting non-experimental work with the ones. It was both the joint practices. And the joint practices are not the time to like throw in an undrafted guy to see how he does with the ones for a couple of reps. So that to me actually feels kind of real. Like they're really considering that. That's really dangerous, right? Like the idea of putting an undrafted rookie in with the ones and starting that player is really dangerous. But if Theo Jackson is either struggling enough where you don't feel great about it, or he's hurt anyways and it becomes a moot point, that kind of becomes what you get down to. You got Jay Ward, Josh Metellus, And Jacoby Thomas is hurt anyways. So it's like starting to get down to that deep on the depth chart anyways, and it becomes this great opportunity for Jacoby Thomas. So I'm going to be watching him like a hawk on the Ravens game, and maybe even incorporating some of what he did with the Giants game into some other content, because that might be a real storyline here, that guy's going to go get some starts. In terms of who's making the team, he's making a fantastic case for himself. But really what I want to watch is Ty Felton. So I talked yesterday about Miles Price and how real I thought his improvement was. And there's some really advanced things happening with Miles Price, but the fact that he's still struggling enough to work through contact is still a little bit concerning, right? It's still a little bit of a, like, that's going to keep him from something crazy like pushing Jawan Jennings for the wide receiver 3 job, or, you know, moving into that that rotation and starting to pull guys who, like, you know, a Jordan Addison or Justin Jefferson out, and justifying, hey, we can give those guys his legs a rest because we got this thing out of Ty Felton, right? And that's the kind of way you get on the field. And that was with Miles Price. But with Ty Felton, I talked about him being more of an around versus through guy. And this sort of showed itself in the Giants game. So when he came out of college, it was nothing. It was, he would just get jacked up and just the route just wouldn't work. And he wouldn't kind of put anything on it. Now I would say this is a very much a normal wide receiver development step, is you go from not putting enough on it and just kind of getting jacked and you're just blanketed and guys can cover you in the NFL. And that happened in the preseason last year. He looked like, I mean, he had his potential, he did his special teams thing, and he had his rookie experience, but it was very clearly not viable to be a person who plays from scrimmage until the game is out of hand, like in the Bengals game where he got some reps. But for him, he's now taken the step where he's putting too much on it. So you don't put enough on it, you get jacked up, you get covered, you get, you know, guys in your pocket all day. You put too much on it, you might make some separation, but you're not there when you need to be there. And so I talked about that for both McCarthy, and I think he was still playing with Wentz out a little bit, just as the young guy getting a lot of reps. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but with McCarthy at least, and a little bit with Kyler Murray, with the ones, because he played that at least that whole first half. He was getting to where he needed to get, but he was always late about it, because if there's press coverage, he has to route really far around it and then stack it back up, which means get back to your path, and now hopefully the guy's behind you and you've made your separation. But how long does that take you? And timing is so important to this Kevin O'Connell offense. So how does it go? So what I would love to see from Ty Felton is for that package to work. Because for me, what I saw with Felton was a guy that goes around and not through. Jordan Addison is also that guy, and he gets plenty of production. It can totally work and get separation and get catches in the NFL. It's no longer an unviable thing. So even if Ty Felton never gets in all year, I can still kind of take to the bank that Ty Felton made a step this year. I can still just kind of put that, hey, Ty Felton took a step in year 2. Wasn't enough to get on the field, but he took a step forward. It's something, right? It's something to chew on. It's not quite enough. For a 3rd round pick, you hope to get more from scrimmage than that. But hey, he's improving, right? Maybe year 3, he takes another step. We can do that if we're doing this time next year. And Ty Felton never got on the field because Jawan Jennings was the wide receiver 3 all year. But if I want to see something from Ty Felton this season, I want to see that package work. Whether it's a rollout, whether it's a lot of work with J.J. McCarthy and he's playing for a whole half. I would like to see a lot of reps from Ty Felton. You know, he's got to get a lot of tread on his tires as a young guy, because who knows how much you're going to get for him in from scrimmage all year. But in those reps, I don't necessarily expect to see his approach change. I think he's still going to route really far around all of his coverage to get open. That's just going to be the guy he is right now. And maybe the guy he is for his whole career, because guys like Jordan Addison or Zay Flowers, if you want to look at a Raven, are absolutely on the same page there. Like, those are guys that have made careers out of this and have been successful. It's not an unsuccessful... Like, don't mistake me for calling him an around, not through guy as necessarily a disparaging thing. Guys can make a living like that always. But you have to be faster than Ty Felton is. And I don't expect him to get faster from one week to the next at that. I think that's about what we're doing, but I would love to see proof positive that you can still get the ball playing that way. And so if the offense can get Ty Felton the ball that way, that would tell me, 8 weeks from now, a couple of wide receivers are hurt. We maybe need to go to Miles Price or Ty Felton. And then Ty Felton becomes an idea of, well, he can get open. You just have to block a little longer. Maybe we can work with that, right? If you're way down to the depth chart because there's been injuries or whatever. That's what I want to see. That's the value you can get out of Ty Felton. And of course, as a punt gunner, that speaks for itself. He's going to have that value for sure. That's what I want to see. And that would be the thing that would make me reconsider the idea of making him wide receiver 4 and Miles Price wide receiver 5 if that flips around. But that's the step up, I guess, that we want to see from Ty Felton. I have seen him improve in the way that like Justin Jefferson and Keenan McCardell, who have said in the media, hey, Ty's taken this step. We've seen what that step is, but it didn't get the ball a lot because the timing wasn't right, even though it was open. So I would love to see that. Maybe see him stay in, play with Carson Wentz a little bit. If the JJ McCarthy off, let's say JJ, still can't get the operation right and that offense just falls apart, give him some Carson Wentz reps so we can do that and we reconsider that quarterback thing. But keep the wide receivers out there so they can get a little bit more tread on their tires with a more normal quarterback situation. And then move on from there. But the other young guy that got a lot of hype, all camp, all OTAs, and then didn't really get involved a lot was Chuck Demmings. And I've never really gotten the chance to talk about what I've seen from Chuck Demmings this preseason game, because I actually did see a little bit of what he could do from the preseason game and then into joint practices with the Ravens, what he's been doing against Jacoby Lane. I talked about that a little bit. But we will continue on with a little Chuck Demmings talk. What can we see from him to really trust him next on Locked On Vikings? This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by KALSHI. With the NFL season getting going, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division, who makes the playoffs, who's lifting the trophy at season's end. And on KALSHI, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. For example, the Vikings are currently trading at about 18% to win the NFC North. So if you think the Vikings can win the NFC North and you made a $100 trade on that, it would pay out about $585 if they indeed took home the crown. On KALSHI, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house, and as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. Trade the draft pick, the game, and more on KALSHI. Download the KALSHI app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. KALSHI. KALSHI. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. KALSHI products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. Moving on here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Let's talk about Chuck Demmings. So I really like what Chuck Demmings has been doing. And it's interesting because against the Giants, I thought he played too safe. There's one play in particular on the broadcast, in my notes that I make mid-game, I blamed it on Jake Goldday. So it was hot quarters. Hot quarters means you're playing cover 4 basically, so you got 4 deep defenders, and then you have 2 underneath defenders, but they kind of stick to the inside, and that's what Jake Goldday was doing. So if there's an out-breaking quick route, one of those deep 4 defenders, the cornerback, will break down on it, which is the hot part. Hey, if the ball is out hot, that's the word that quarterbacks use for if there's a blitz or something. And it's a 6-man coverage, so there is a blitz, and you're expecting the ball to be out quickly. And so that was an outbreaker that was kind of nebulously between Goldday and Demmings. Demmings was the corner in that case. Should he have come down? Should Goldday have widened out a little bit more and gotten it? It's kind of debatable. And I think on looking at the All-22, I blame Demmings more than Goldday. But it's one of these debatable reps. But either way, you look at Demmings and you can't argue that he played it a little too safe. And understanding that you're in a hot coverage, you're in a 6-man coverage, the deep route is not going to have time to develop. So when a guy breaks, that ain't a double move. There's no way that's a double move. If it is a double move against a blitz, like what quarterback is ever throwing a double move against a blitz? Think about that. You just don't have time for that to develop. And so one of the things about getting used to playing for Brian Flores when you were at Stephen F. Austin is that you got to jump on that and be really aggressive. So that's where I would love to see more aggression from Chuck Demings, that kind of play. There were a couple of those where I just thought he played a little bit too deep. If I can get a little nitty gritty with you for a second about Chuck Demings. He's not backpedaling or anything as a corner, which would be insanity. But he's playing these little kick steps, these little kind of scoochy steps, where he's getting 4 yards of depth in 3 steps, which is a lot of time to go 4 yards. So you're not exactly screaming back and getting a ton of depth way too fast or anything like that. Like you are still buying more time with your depth and being like kind of slow playing it a little bit with those kind of steps. That's fine. But it's like too many of those. You take 3 of those steps and get 4 yards when you were already 7 yards off, and so you're 11 yards back, and you give up an 8-yard catch, right? That's not happy for anybody. You buy a lot of time, but you give him an 8-yard catch. So for him, maybe aligning a little bit closer could always be a thing. If he decides to do that in like coverages where he's allowed to, every coverage has like different alignment rules. Or just don't take as many steps. Hey, take 2 instead of 3. You're going to still be able to see what you're doing, but take 2 instead of 3. And play that a little bit more aggressive. Be more confident in who you are. Well, then you get to the joint practices. And I talked about this a little bit yesterday. But there's been a couple of reps. One of them was against Jacoby Lane, but a couple of reps against the Ravens where Chuck Demings suddenly plays really aggressive. He's like up, he's pressing, and he's underreacting to everything. And so somebody like Jacoby Lane will give him some kind of head fake on the release, better yet, they'll step to his outside. And he just doesn't respond. He just doesn't step with them. Basically calling a bluff, saying you're going to cut back inside, right? But he's not cutting back inside. This is now an outside release and you've given up separation and now this thing's going to be a big, long touchdown. That's the other side of the coin, right? You play too aggressive, especially in press, you play too aggressive. And you are, your guy is gone and suddenly you've given up a touchdown. So this is the cat and this is the game of chicken that cornerbacks are always playing. So in some places, he's playing too aggressive. In some places, he's playing too passive. And so one of the things that I would love to see from Chuck Demings, it's going to be a hard thing to ask for from a rookie for Stephen F. Austin. And I remember my deal with Demings when they drafted him, and even before they drafted him, he was somebody I really liked in day 3. So I was excited when they drafted him because I saw the potential and the athleticism, and you knew what you were dealing with. But I was like, cool, that guy's going to need a year because the NFL is different than Stephen F. Austin. That guy's just going to need a year. I'm excited about that. A 5th rounder that needs a year and then has a bunch of athletic upside is a great 5th rounder to me. But that's a sort of experience-based thing that you get when you play scout team all day long. And when you're playing scout team against the Vikings, you're covering Justin Jefferson all day. And that's probably what's going to happen to him in week to week. He's going to be playing off of, preparation. He's going to be essentially mimicking whatever defense that they're playing next week and covering Addison and Jefferson all day in it. That's pretty rough, right? This is a tough assignment. And in doing that, you're going to get a great sense because those guys are so good at punishing over or under aggression. You're going to get a great sense for exactly where you're going to play. And so I'm excited about that for Chuck Demings in the long-term future. But in terms of what I would love to see is the very Flores-y basics. What I would love to see for Chuck Demings, and I hope that he gets one of these play calls, is one of those all-up presentations from the Vikings where everybody's on the line of scrimmage and all the corners and safeties are like 10 yards off. And they play that off man. And I would love to see the ball come Demings' way and for him to come up and make that tackle. I would love to see that play. Because then it's like, okay, if somebody gets injured, we can put you in. We don't have to make you a healthy scratch every game day, right? We can, you can come in and at least play that stuff, which is like the most important thing for the Flores defense. Because when Brian Flores blitzes and you get the ball out, it's really the corner's got to make the tackle or he's screaming down the sideline and it's a touchdown. So you have to be able to make that play. I would love to see proof that he can make that play so you can put him in and call those things in the middle of a game if a bunch of people get injured. And of course, I would love to see a little bit more or a little less arbitrary decision making when it comes to how far off he is, how far off he's going to be a few steps into the play, and just how aggressive he is with this like coverage stuff. That's what I would love to see from Chuck Demmings, Ty Felton, of course, JJ McCarthy from earlier in the show. I will talk to you all tomorrow right after the game. About as soon as the clock hits 000, I click the live button and we are going to go within moments. So make sure you come on over to the Locked On Vikings YouTube channel for, it's going to be like an hour and a half of immediate post-game content. So go come hang out. Let us be your kind of post-game radio. And that's going to be the way it is through the season as well. And then, of course, Locked On Vikings continues as normal throughout the next week. I will talk to you all then. And as always, Skol.